For organizations that use a learning management system, or LMS, we can provide a SCORM-compatible course with the following added benefits: completion tracking, exam, personalized course with own branding and logo. Send us an email to know more. In this course, we will cover the reasons for incidents or accidents related to cockpit interruptions and distractions. It is no secret that an important part of being a pilot is to manage several tasks at the same time. Usually, it is done efficiently. Yet, the handling of one task to the detriment of others is a common source of error in the cockpit. This course is based on the article, Cockpit Interruptions and Distractions. Its link will be displayed at the bottom of this video. In this lesson, we will discuss how distractions affect the safety of the flight. What are the 4 main categories of distractions? What are the 6 ways to avoid errors due to distractions? One of the most known cockpit distraction that led to a catastrophic event was Eastern Airlines Flight 401. The aircraft crashed in Florida's Everglades in December of 1972. One of the causes of the accident was the crew distraction caused by a malfunctioning landing gear light bulb. Though nothing was wrong with the landing gear, beside the light, the distraction led to the crew not noticing that the autopilot was inadvertently disabled. The aircraft started to lose altitude until reaching the ground. This accident resulted in 101 fatalities and many more injured. This accident changed aviation safety forever by emphasizing the issues related to distractions, started increased study in the topic of crew resource management or CRM, and initiated the need to have a ground warning proximity system in all airliners. According to a NASA study made in the 90s, 50% of crew errors involved lapses of attention. These resulted from interruptions, distractions, and preoccupation of one task to the exclusion of another. After studying accidents reports, researchers identified routine tasks that were neglected, in the detriment of others, during a critical moment. Data showed that 69% of them involved either the failure to monitor the current status, position of the aircraft, or the failure to monitor the actions of the pilot flying, in flight or during taxi. Based on all these studies, researchers classified the type of distractions a crew may experience into 4 categories. These are communication, head-down work, searching for VMC traffic, and responding to an abnormal situation. The first category is communication. Crews are reporting being distracted by some form of communication. This may come from interaction with air traffic control, but also from between the flight crew and even the cabin crew. It has been discovered that most, although not all of these discussions, were pertinent to flight. In many cases, the discussion could have been deferred. This is not to mean that the crew must stop communicating. On the contrary, this is highly encouraged. It is important to understand that crews that communicate well tend to perform better overall. Nevertheless, the downside of mismanaged communication is that it demands a substantial amount of attention. On top of this, because of social norms, it is usually difficult to suspend the conversation when other tasks must be performed. The biggest danger is that the crew may not notice cues that something is not going as planned. We will see later in this course how to cope with distractions related with communication, but we already want to emphasize that special care must be taken when communicating, especially when others enter the cockpit. This added dynamic has the potential to create a loss of situational awareness. The second category is related to head-down tasks. The act of monitoring the pilot flying or taxiing is a particularly challenging responsibility, for several reasons. This is because the other pilot has other tasks to perform as well. Also, there is usually more than one aspect to monitor. The pilot flying is performing a range of activities that vary in content and time. Moreover, the pilot monitoring cannot entirely anticipate the actions of his crewmate. Finally, serious errors from the pilot flying are rare. It is therefore tempting for the other pilot to wane the monitoring during high workload. By head-down tasks, it is meant the period during which the pilot is looking at other items than the main instrument's air map. Usually, this happens when reading checklists or when programming the Flight Management System or FMS. These periods are especially vulnerable because the eyes are diverted from other tasks. Some activities demand such a high level of attention that attempting to perform them with other tasks substantially increase the risk of error. As mentioned earlier, attempting to perform long FMS tasks during busy segments of flight can become problematic. It is not possible for the pilot monitoring to reliably monitor during long programming tasks, and it is difficult to suspend the programming without losing its progress. The third category is being interrupted by traffic and visually searching for it. This surge takes the pilot's eyes away from the monitoring aircraft position and status. It also demands high mental attention. If the conflict is close to urgency, it may further narrow the focus of attention. Even if the interruption has been resolved, its effects may linger for a long time. The search for VMC traffic might lead to forget tasks or instructions that were given prior to the interruption. One common error is to forget to comply with ATC altitude restrictions after an interruption. The last category of common distractions is the response to abnormal situations. Abnormal situations easily occupy crew's attention for the following reasons: recognizing the cockpit warning indicators, identifying the nature of the problem, and choosing the correct procedure require considerable attention. Crews have naturally much less opportunity to practice abnormal procedures compared to normal procedures. Also, choosing and running the appropriate checklist require more efforts and greater concentration of mental resources than the normal checklist. During urgent and threatening situations, the normal human response is to narrow the focus of attention. This tends to diminish mental flexibility and reduce the ability to analyze and resolve non-routine situations. Now that we have discovered the main sources of distraction, it is important to explain what can be done about them. In the next few slides, we will discuss the 6 countermeasures that will decrease the risk of accidents or incidents caused by distractions. The first one being to recognize that conversions are a powerful distractor. During high workload situations, conversations should be kept brief and to the point. Even in low workload situations, the crew should suss their discussion frequently to scan the status of the aircraft. For this to happen, discipline will be required because it goes against the natural flow of conversation, which is fluid and continuous. Most importantly, regulations are enforcing a sterile cockpit during critical flight phases, such as taxiing and final approach for landing. The second countermeasure is to recognize that head-down tasks greatly reduce the ability to monitor the other pilot and the aircraft status. This is the reason you may opt to reschedule head-down tasks to low workload periods. Also, you may want to announce that you are starting a head-down task to inform the other pilot your attention will be given elsewhere. Finally, you may choose the most suitable level of automation in line with the workload. For instance, in case of altitude change by ATC, Flight Control Unit or FCU entries require less head-down time compared to an entry in the Multipurpose Control Display Unit or MCDU. Another example would be a policy where the pilot flying command the other pilot to be the one to enter an input in the FCU. This would maximize the resources available in the cockpit and ensure the pilot flying focus on the flight. The third countermeasure is to schedule or reschedule activities from critical periods to low workload periods. This is to minimize conflicts. For instance, both pilots should suspend activities not related to taxiing when crossing active runways. Also, making the descent briefing earlier than during the descent is easier. Last example is to review checklists only if necessary, as to avoid doing tasks while attention is needed somewhere else. The fourth countermeasure is as follows: when 2 tasks must be performed at the same time, set up a scan and avoid letting attention take too long on either one. This takes practice and experience, but it is worth doing it. Please be aware that some tasks, such as building an approach in the MCDU, take time sharing resources away from other tasks, with an increased chance of errors. The fifth countermeasure is to treat interruptions as red flags. Knowing that we are vulnerable to preoccupation with interruptive tasks can help reduce that vulnerability. The best example is an interruption while going through a checklist. To deal with an interruption, we suggest the following: 1. Identify the interruption when it occurs. 2. Ask what you were doing before the interruption, immediately after it occurred. And 3. Decide what action to take to get back on track. The last countermeasure is to explicitly assign the crew's roles and duties in advance. As a result, the pilot flying will be dedicated to controlling the aircraft. He must firmly concentrate into the primary responsibility of flying the plane. Nevertheless, this does not prevent each pilot from having to perform each other's task. The pilot in command may ask the pilot monitoring to be in charge of the flying momentarily or for the rest of the flight. But this must be clearly stated. The most important factor is to ensure that someone is flying the airplane and avoid a situation where none of the pilots are in charge of the flying. In this lesson, we have discussed how distractions affect the safety of a flight, the 4 categories of distraction: communication, head-down tasks, searching for VMC traffic, and responding to abnormal situations. Finally, we review the 6 countermeasures, recognizing the potential effect of conversations. Recognizing the potential effect of head-down tasks. The importance of scheduling tasks. The importance of scanning. Treating interruptions as red flags. And explicitly assigning pilots duties and responsibilities. Thank you for your attention, and let us know what other topic you want us to discuss in the comments section.